It is really such a boost to see so many interested residents who care about our community and want to make our city thrive. As we start the meeting, I would first like to offer a land acknowledgement. El Cerrito is located in Huchuan, known as the East Bay, on the unceded territories of the Chochenyo-speaking Lijan Ohlone peoples, who have continuously lived upon this land since time immemorial. We support the rematriation of this land by offering Shumi tax, the word for gift, to the Sogorea Te Land Trust. And we invite you all to give as well. The Sogorea Te Land Trust website also has a huge number of resources that you can read more about the work that they do. So we'd love to get to know everyone a little bit. If you wouldn't mind opening up the chat, depending upon your screen, you can click on the three dots that say more and then bring up chat, and just go ahead and type in your name and how long you've lived in El Cerrito, and is there a city service or a program that you rely on or care about? All right. We have Ezra says 2 years and the library. Sherry since 1999, library, rec, and senior programs. Yes. Lived here 6 months, park and rec. Absolutely. 30 years, fire department. Yes. Job here, first moved from El Cerrito in 1993. 4th of July. Yes. Rebecca has been around here about 10 years, and kids summer camps, our program that Rebecca relies on. John, 20 years. We have rec programs. So for those who have just joined us, I'd like to invite you to open up the chat. You can find that under more, depending upon your screen. And then just type in your name, how long you've lived in El Cerrito, and if there's a city service or program that you rely on or care about. I'm looking through the answers, and there's so many exciting things here. The library, the 4th of July annual event, kids camps, arts and cultural programs. Zach's, acknowledges haven't had to rely on the fire department, but want to keep it that way and make sure they're funded. Helen acknowledges the pool, the recycling center, the street cleaning, trash pickup, the Seven Vista Park Festival, and Earth Day cleanups. Oh my goodness, we have so many amazing things in our city. So this is going to keep going for a little bit. Everyone, please keep that open and continue to share. The purpose of this meeting is to provide some background on the city's current financial crisis. We're also going to be offering an overview of the state auditor's recommendation, and we'd like to give you all an opportunity to react, to share your thoughts for the city, and to prepare questions and comments for the April 10th town hall, which is sponsored by the city manager. And Anne just noticed, I just noticed Anne here chimed in with lived here for 23 years, library, senior center services, especially monthly podiatrist volunteer and volunteer opportunities. Wonderful. All right. So we have some speakers here that will be guiding us through kind of a little bit of how we got here, what the stakes are, and our hopes for where to go from here. So if we could go to the next slide. So just to introduce myself, my name is Rhea Ewing. I use they, them pronouns. An example of how you might use that in a sentence is Rhea facilitated the meeting. They didn't do very much of the back end work, but they like to talk, so they got this job. The people who have done a lot of really wonderful work, among others, we have Miguel, who uses he, him pronouns, and Rhea J, sorry, it's confusing, who uses she or they pronouns. And both of them will be walking us through our presentation tonight. Would one of you like to take it away?
Yeah, and I'd just like to let you know we will be going over the El Cerrito's financial crisis, the state auditor's findings, the El Cerrito Progressive's reaction, and have that community discussion. Miguel, if you'll go ahead and take it away.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Miguel Gravel Isaguirre here. El Cerrito is in a in a fiscal crisis at the moment because of reckless overspending, overinflated salaries, and unmanaged spending habits. The state auditor has released their damning audit, and we are facing multiple credit downgrades, a hyphen from a junk bond, massive recreational cuts, and layoffs. Right now, the city council is considering $2 million in cuts, and the city has the power to reduce all the management salaries and reduce expenditures. The city does have the power to reduce police staffing without going to the union, and the city has the power to conduct a wage and compensation study, as well as a study to reorganize public safety to further reduce cost. The city will be borrowing money once again. The question will be how much and at what cost. And ultimately, based on the unfunded pension costs, the enormous expenditures in public safety, we will not get out of the hole for a long time. Parks and recreational centers will not be maintained, not to mention our streets. As salaries and pensions costs grow, services will falter, and most likely the city will come to you, the taxpayer, and ask for more taxes. Tell them no, unless they can change their way of doing business. Okay, so general fund. Okay. So I'm going to explain a little bit about the general fund. So as you can see on the screen, the largest of the city's funds, a source for discretionary spending, and funds many of the basic municipal services such as public safety, health and human services, and public works. Primary revenue sources include local taxes such as property and sales, as you can see here. And this is from the 2019-2020 general fund. So as you can see, property tax 25%, sales tax 17, other revenue 17, 40% charge for services, 10% intergovernmental revenue, 9% property tax, and utility use tax. Okay, so now we're going to cover the general fund reserve. This fund is intended to help the city when revenues temporarily fall short of expenditures. It is recommended to stay at 17% of the general fund, and El Cerrito aims for 10% plus the 6 million for emergencies. A city's general fund reserve greatly affects their credit worthiness. Aren't you supposed to shift a slide? Oh, okay. Yep. So, sorry, we're having trouble coordinating this from two rooms. I apologize. I don't do well with prompters. Yep, okay. El Cerrito is managed by a city manager who, alongside the financial director, creates a budget which is approved by the city council. From 2009 to 2017, Scott Hannon was the El Cerrito city manager, and in 2011, El Cerrito borrowed 3.5 million. During this time, salaries increased, as you can see, from 2009 to 2016. City management more than doubled. The minimums being paid on pension costs were decreasing, and the general fund reserves that El Cerrito aimed to keep at 10% plus 6 million was also decreasing. Mm-hmm.
Depleted general fund reserves. By fiscal year 2016 to 2017, our general fund reserves are depleted to pay increased salaries. Scott Hannon retires, Karen Pinkos becomes the city manager, and the general fund reserve stays negative, and El Cerrito must borrow more money to meet its payroll. At the time of 2011, we had already borrowed $3 million, and by 2019, that turned into $9 million to pay for payroll and to keep operations going. As you can see here, they dropped from 0.5%, that was the first time we went negative, to 6.1%, then to 4.1% and a 4.4%. And now we can see that the we're still at 76% of the general fund expenditures are going to salaries. And I just saw the note about going slower on the slides, and I will make sure I'm calibrating. Sorry about that, y'all. And yes, the slides will be available after the meeting. Everyone will have access to the slides. And we'll be giving it to everyone after the meeting because it will have questions and answers that anybody might have. We're going to answer them in the slideshow. Trans. Trans is tax revenue anticipation notes. Trans are issued by the municipal government to finance short-term cash flow deficits that occur due to irregular receipt of tax and/or revenues. Now, because in El Cerrito, we already had a negative general fund reserves, what this greatly affects us. The lower the general fund reserve, the higher the loan fees and interest paid. El Cerrito's negative general fund means we are paying even more in loan fees and interest. As you can see here on the graph, that while this is happening, our credit rating is degrading, putting our ability to borrow or be invested in at jeopardy. And what you can see on this graph here is that in 2015, 2017, we go from a little over $100,000 in interest and fees to over $175,000 in 2018 and 2019. But in 2020 and 2021, this fiscal year, these fees and interest are over $345,000. That's the salary of 9 recreation leaders. Now, what you can also see is that our credit rating goes from a AA negative to a BBB negative. If we just remove that hyphen, we become a junk bond. Literally, so we're literally a hyphen away. So reckless spending habits from the finance department. A lot of people wondering how were departments able to overspend in their department? And the auditor laid it out like this. Step 1, after the city council approves a city's budget, the finance department staff record the authorized limit in the financial accounting system for each expenditure category. During the fiscal year, a department approves a payment request to the finance department for a purchase. However, the purchase results in year-to-date expenditures exceeding the authorized limit for that particular expenditure category. Step 3, the finance department staff enter the expenditure transaction in the accounting system. The finance department staff select the option to bypass the warning, thereby allowing the transaction to be posted and the payment to be authorized. The system generates a warning message that the recording of the transaction would result in total expenditures exceeding the authorized limit. The consequences of circumventing these safeguards means that departments are able to spend beyond their budgets, their approved budgets. The city manager and finance director cannot control excessive spending, and the city council cannot rely on the budget when it attempts to oversee the financial condition. According to the Fiscal Health of California Cities dashboard, we are in terrible shape. We rank number 1 with negative reserves in the Bay Area. We also rank number 1 in California cities amongst Calixio, Chino, and Calipatria. We rank number 1 as well because of how negative our reserves are. We have no money for emergency reserves. We have no money set aside to pay for committed pensions to potential retirees for both current and future pension costs, and no real course of action if money is needed, liquidity. Based on this finding, the state auditor recommended to audit to see if El Cerrito can be rescued from bankruptcy. And at this time, we are ranked 8th overall for risky fiscal health in 2017. Then we're at 6th, we're ranking 6th in the state by 2019. When members of El Cerrito progressives met with the city manager and the finance director to ask questions about the poor rating of our city and the financial risk, particularly the use of the short-term loan and lack of reserves. We were told that the auditor was overreacting. Greg Lyman didn't particularly welcome an audit from the state as well. In 2019, after his meeting with the state auditor to discuss the high-risk rating, he said, "We talked about how an audit might be a huge drain on our staff when we most need them to help with our efforts to resolve our financial issues and prepare a budget." So what happened all of 2019? Did the city council ask for meaningful change from the city manager? No. Did the city manager conduct a wage compensation study or consider salary since they represent 76% of the budget? No. Did the financial director change his accounting processes? No. And we just saw how that process allowed departments to overspend. And did the city council extend the city manager's contract? Yes. Mayor Lyman finalized a 2-year extension of Karen Pinkos's contract before leaving office. I noticed that I have a typo there, y'all. You'll see it in a second. So will the city council listen to the auditor? Councilmember Gabe Quinto says, "I hope we do. The state audit and auditors will tell us what to do." The budget cuts are finally hitting home in February of 2020, and the city manager produces her first suggestions for $2 million in cuts. Councilmember Gabe Quinto early on wants to cut library and other services as the city council debates whether we will have our 4th of July celebration. Quinto agrees to listen to the auditor. Unfortunately, the report won't be released for another year and we will go further into debt. The California State Auditor's report is released on March 16, 2021. The report is released and the state audit of the city of El Cerrito's financial management concludes that the city officials did not curb overspending practices, even as revenues began to fall, negligently spending the city to the brink of bankruptcy. More than half of the city's total expenditures have gone to the police and fire department salaries and benefits, the audit states. The city manager responds, and the auditor replies that El Cerrito's statement and previous comments appear to imply that our audit was not a fair assessment of the city. The auditor added, "We disagree. We stand by our findings and our conclusions." And we at the El Cerrito Progressives also agree with the auditor. Oops. So we're going to be discussing some of the auditor's findings and recommendations. We recommend reading the full report, but we'll focus on the biggest impacts on our city's budgets and common misconceptions. We're going to be focusing on auditor finding number 1, which is a lack of budget cuts in public safety. Auditor finding number 2, which is about misrepresentations or contradictions of budget cuts by the ECPD. And auditor finding number 3, overstaffing in public safety, specifically ECPD. Auditor finding number 1. El Cerrito has not focused enough attention on reducing or controlling spending in its police department, which represent most of the city's spending on salaries. I'm going to show you a few graphs that goes over the overspending of the police department over the last 10 years. I'll take my time on it. I know I went a little bit fast on the other ones. And I'm going to show you how the salaries increased by over 160%. As you can see here, city management, as I said before, was at 3%, police was at 17%, and fire was at 14%. In 2016, that increases to 6.3 for the city manager, doubling their pays, 25.6 for the police, and 19.8 for fire. By 2021, we are at 26% for the police department, 25 for fire, 24 for all other salaries and benefits for other city departments. And last but not least, duplicates. There we go. This is a graph, and you will notice that the blue shaded area, that is referring to the police budget and the police salary increases. And we're going to spend a little bit of time focusing here. Auditor finding number 2, contradictions in proposed budget cuts by the police department. Proposed budget, okay, the auditor called out the city manager and police chief a number of times in the report, stating that the city manager and chief offered no reduction of expenditures in the proposed plan. The overall impact of the police department, this is a quote from the auditor, excuse me. The overall impact of the police department reorganization is limited and would not result in actual budget cuts. The proposed budget cuts of $595,000 by restructuring police operations, number 1, does not account for the $34,000 increase from prior year actual cost. So they said it was a cut, but there's actually a $34,000 increase, $3,400 increase. Cannot say numbers, sorry, y'all. It includes multiple positions that have been vacant for 3 years. So they were including vacant positions as a part of their budget cut, but these have been positions that have been vacant for 3 years. And it is limited because it is driven by the retirement of an officer rather than a proactive assessment of the police department's functions. Misconceptions and sorting through the data. This brings us to some common misconceptions and misrepresentations. Discussing reductions in policing staff often raises a lot of alarms and strong emotions, from defund the police to back the blue or chaos will reign without order. We want to instead focus on the auditor's recommendations, ECPD reported data, the FBI data, and common policing misconceptions, which will be used to defend bloated budgets. Excuse me, go back here. So one of the myths is as follows, is that the police have made their fair share of budget cuts. The ECPD is the biggest pot of our tax dollars. They're fully subsidized and have not realized any real budget cuts. The Recreation Department is left with under 12% of the pie, which covers many beloved city services. And the 2020-2021 budget reported $1.6 million in reductions. $700,000 of this amount is attributed to positions in the police and community development departments, again, that have been vacant for years. The Recreation Department makes money for our city and is superior in its cost recovery when compared to many cities, both locally and in similar size. You see on this graph here, the Recreation Department faced layoffs, almost 20% budget reduction since last year, and are threatened with program closures. Just to put this in perspective, while the police department is fully subsidized by the general fund, the Recreation Department generates revenue for our city. Does it make sense to cut programs that generate revenue? Auditor finding number 3. The El Cerrito Police Department is overstaffed. El Cerrito has also not made, this again is the auditor, El Cerrito has not made concerted efforts to reduce spending in its police department, despite the large number of staff in that department. As of November 2020, the police department had 47 employees, representing 28% of the total city staff. Those employees included 39 sworn officers. The department provides a range of services, including investigation, traffic enforcement, and canine police dogs that cost $20,000 per dog. That would cover the cost of a herd of firefighting goats. Just saying. In fiscal year 2019 to 2020, the police department paid $588,000 in overtime cost, representing 4.5% of the department's overall budget. This is a relatively low amount of overtime cost, and it is indication that the police department may be overstaffed. Again, these are quotes from the auditor. The auditor agrees with the Contra Costa County Grand Jury Report of 2020. Even after we adjusted the ratio to account for the size of El Cerrito's police department as of November 2020, this updated ratio of 1.53 officers per 1,000 residents continues to be higher than the state and county benchmark. The grand jury report also states that El Cerrito's policing staff level is the second highest among cities in this county. The state as a whole is 1.48, and the overall average for Contra Costa is 1.09. Some people object to police staffing, including Councilmember Gabe Quinto, but it appears that there are room for cuts without risking the safety of our city. Both the Auditor and the Contra Costa Grand Jury report of 2020 agree that the police department is overstaffed. You can see by this graphic that over half the calls, most of which are non-emergency, are responded to by at least 2 units and sometimes 4. Each unit has 2 sworn officers. Imagine 3 units showing up for a false alarm. Crime goes up when police presence goes down is another policing myth. And this graph here is showing the correlation between staffing and crime rates in El Cerrito. Police staffing of sworn personnel as compared with the incidence of violence in the community of El Cerrito. The blue line shows personnel fluctuating between 49 and 54, and the red line shows the number of violent incidents each year. And violence and harm in our community is more often tied to economic injustices, not the lack of police personnel. And we have the word violent in quotes because, according to the ECPD, violent can range from somebody reportedly hearing gunshots that could be firecrackers, or from actual aggravated assault, which does make up the majority of the cases that they have to deal with when they do have to deal with violent incidences. Another policing myth is if we cut the police budget, chaos will reign. We're going to look at what happened in Vallejo. When Vallejo declared bankruptcy in 2008, they reduced their force from 155 to 90 officers, a 47% cut. Violent crime and property crime trended downward for the next 4 years. Incidents of violence began rising throughout the region after 2012 and realized a sharp uptick in 2014, where we saw the nation slump into another recession. Another policing myth is that crime is on the rise in El Cerrito. This is something commonly stated by Gabe Quinto, who again said that he wants to listen to the auditor. If we look at this graph here, you'll see that the smallest line on that graph is violent crime, and it has stayed relatively low. But the more important thing to notice is the downward trend of crime in El Cerrito that has been declining since COVID. Another reason for us to consider reducing staff. And there is also a very low nonviolent crime and traffic-related crimes as well. But again, those are on the downward trend. And there are a lot of security checks. Another policing myth is that the police are busy solving crimes. ECPD is mostly checking on suspicious people or answering false alarms. 72% of all calls are false alarms. Police go out on false alarm calls on the average of 2.5 daily. Over 90% of these alarms fail to lead to any police action. The ECPD as a whole respond to a violent incident less than 1 time per day on average. Battery is the most frequent in these scenarios. In some situations, there was no police action at all, or it was determined that no crime took place. Policing myth number 6. Cutting police will impact Black and Hispanic communities the hardest. If you are Black, you are more likely to be stopped by the police. It's one thing to call the police for help. It's another thing to be sought out by the police when you're trying to live your life. Black Americans are far less likely to report positive outcomes by relying on the police. Other research indicates that Black people desire more community investment alternatives, more police transparency and accountability, and an end to police racism and brutality. And here's a graph showing from an FBI report on policing in the Bay Area. And it shows that you are 13 times more likely to be stopped and arrested by police in El Cerrito and in Albany than anywhere else in the Bay. And I can speak to this personally. I get stopped at least once a week while walking through El Cerrito and Albany as they're doing security checks. I don't appreciate it, guys and gals, you folks. Anyway, El Cerrito has 55.1% of Black arrests, and Black people only represent 5.4% of the population. Let's see. Sherry, are we doing the scorecard right now? Do I read it now, or do we do that after?
No,
Okay.
we're just reading it right now.
We can read it. Okay. Well, I'm going to read you guys.
You can look at the scorecard.
Yeah, here's our scorecard. And a lot of it, and these are the recommendations from the auditor, and ECP agrees with them, and we want to get your opinion as well. Those recommendations include cutting management salaries. Yes, we want that. Cut police department cost. Absolutely. Conduct a wage study. Absolutely. Conduct a study on organizational efficiencies. They definitely need that. Reduce police staffing. Yes, we've already seen why we need it. And raise cost of recreation programs. Absolutely not. Recreation is bringing in the most money. They want to cut recreation. No, we got to tell them no. And I'm going to go ahead and throw it back to Rhea.
All right. Thank you, Rhea, and thank you, Miguel. Both of you, that was an incredible presentation. As a lot of people noted in the chat, there was a lot of information all at once, but you did a beautiful job presenting it. And like you said earlier, the presentation will be made available to everyone after this. So if you want to, take your time, have a glass of wine or two while looking at the city budget and shaking your head, you will have the opportunity to do that. In the meantime, we have a brief period of time set aside right now to answer any questions that folks might have. So if you have a question about the situation or about El Cerrito Progressive's take on anything, please raise your virtual hand or type your question into the chat. All unanswered questions will be answered in our newsletter, which you can subscribe to at elcerritoprogressives.com. Rhea J, do we have any hands raised?
From Helen, yes. And I apologize if I don't go in order.
All right, Helen, please unmute yourself. What's your question?
Hi, thanks for the great presentation. So is it possible to put the slide back up? I was wondering if we could see the pie chart you showed at the beginning. It was like a ring. It went really fast. I don't know if that's the current state or was that historic? I think it was current. It was like the second slide.
One second. Let's see.
Miguel was talking during it and it animated and then it went away. It was like a little ghost in and out.
Sorry about that. Yeah, let me go up.
No, sorry, no judgment.
I need to figure out how to use a computer. 1 second.
No.
Escape. There you go.
This is one of those times where I remind myself it's a miracle technology works at all. And
actually, if I can share my actual screen, that'll actually be faster because I'm on 2 different monitors, y'all. I'm gonna share my screen. And did you have a question about that, Helen?
Well, I wanted to see it again because I thought I had a question and then it went away. Maybe if it's even possible to share it while other people's questions are coming in, I'll just look at it. I know we're getting these afterwards, but since we're here as a community and we can post some discussion topics, it'd be good to have it up,
I think that's
Absolutely.
a great point, Helen.
Thank you.
Rhea, do you have the permissions that you need to share your screen?
Yes, I am just being slow. My many apologies.
That's
Doing great.
Let's see.
All right, I am seeing, while you're pulling that up, I'm seeing some questions in the chat. Sarah asked, what are the next steps? We have the auditor's report, now what? And Yari pointed out, next steps include participating in the city's virtual budget town hall on April 10th. So that is an event that is being hosted by the city, specifically the city manager, and is the best opportunity to make sure that we as residents and community members are heard and that we make it clear that things can't go on the way that they have been, and that we agree with at least the majority of the auditor's points. And also, I'm sure there's probably going to be some great new ideas that that folks have. Okay, And let's see, just above that, Linda asks, with the current city council, is there any improvement in the approach and the deficit? That is a really great question, Linda. So folks, I have not been able to attend the city council meetings over the last few months due to some other obligations. Folks who have been in those meetings, do you have any thoughts?
Sherry can answer that. Go ahead, and Sherry.
Sure. I've been attending, and yeah, I think we have some hope with two of the new council members, Lisa Motoyama and Tessa Rudnick, which means we just need to get a third person to act responsibly, and that would be helpful. So but it's still a push. I noticed another question in the chat. Someone asked, they said, Linda said it was a lot of work what we did, and other than saving services and getting useful cuts in the budget, what's our motivation? And any funding for this? I'm not sure what any funding means, if it means like this show or whatever, no. But what I do want to say is that, you know, what we've noticed over time, and I think with the auditor's report, it's just the whole way the city does business. So I think we're not just exposing the fact that we've got a financial crisis, we're exposing the whole city structure, their way of decision making, the lack of transparency. I know there's people here tonight who serve on like the financial advisory board. It's frustrating. So I think it's time for people to take a look at what's going on and you know, do something about it. But we're going to have time in the breakout rooms to really talk more strategy and more specific about these things. Thanks, Rhea.
Of course. And Ellen S has had her hand up for a little bit, so I want to go ahead and let her ask a question.
Oh yes, please unmute yourself.
Hi there. Does my video come up also, or just my voice?
Your video's up.
Oh, okay. Well, I first want to give you guys a big virtual hug. You're great. Thank you. I'm so grateful for all your work. Here's a few things. I have a particular concern about what I see as the most essential public health aspect, period, which is fires, smoke inhalation, and what are focused on fire prevention monies. Okay, so I by the way, I'm the person who wrote and pushed and did politics with the old world, reactive, not proactive management style. I pitched the goats, not fire department dogs, by the way. You said 20 grand a dog. Does that include the pension costs for the officer? I'm serious. Yeah. You know, I mean, and the way we all conceive of this, you know, I would really like to be thinking creatively here. And I know everybody has different perspectives on what's important. And I'll cop, pun intended, to the fact that I have been in the environmental field and attending climate change conferences since 1980. I am also, by the way, I'm happy to volunteer or help. I am also, you know, very aware of the disproportionate impact health-wise on, you know, it's not just the policing. In terms of the effect on kids and asthma rates and the, you know, the way these smoke events have been handled, I would really encourage us to consider, are we paying enough attention to really being creative and getting underneath what I have experienced as a total stonewalling about what is really going on with that 25% fire department budget? Have we been spending 25% of our time on really the nitty gritty. Everybody's like, oh yeah, fires. Okay. So cut me off and tell me, stop there.
I
Or
am going to stop you there just
yeah,
because I love the energy that you're bringing, Ellen, and these are really fantastic points. They also are going to be a little bit better suited. We're about to go into breakout rooms, and that'll be
okay.
like the great time where we're going to give everyone space to like brainstorm and think about where we want to put focus. And please bring that energy. Like, yes.
Well, maybe you could do one breakout room for people who want to do the fire department. Here's my one point. We have not benchmarked fire prevention. There is half of one FTE. There is no dedicated fire prevention people. We're so behind. So that's my,
yeah. Well, and I think that you also bring up a good point of like the nuance of, making sure that, looking at the efficacy of the fire department, and that is not necessarily saying like fire safety isn't important. It's saying fire safety is actually very important, and we want to make sure that we're doing this wisely. I do want to address a few other questions. Ellen, we will have an opportunity to come back to you in a moment. So Alex asked, was I understanding it correctly? When the El Cerrito PD made cuts, they cut positions that were actually vacant. That is correct. Did the city miss shortfall projections? How does the math shake out? That is a great question. Let's see.
Actually, hey, Rhea.
Yes.
I think we don't necessarily have enough time for any more questions. We'll have to answer them in the PowerPoint. I know we need to go to the breakout rooms. I think that means we're going to be going a little over time. If people want to stay a little bit longer to chat, that's fine. Is that okay? Can we keep the chat open and stuff?
It just means that because no one has the guts to do what needs to be done, someone from the outside comes in and then they do it.
All right, well said, Sherry. All right, like I said, we're going to go into breakout rooms. I hope everyone had I'm sure many wonderful conversations happened. Would anyone like to give a report back from their breakout room using either, or you can raise your hand, and specifically try to focus on what questions did you come up with that you might want to ask the City Council, and what actions do you plan to take, and what statements are you going to make, and try to keep it brief, like to about one breath, since we're already over time, and I really want to be respectful to everyone who took time to come here today. Let's see.
I'll go ahead and start it off, Rhea.
Great, thank you.
So one of the biggest questions we had was, can the auditor do something? Can the auditor come and have any more control? We looked it up. We found out that they could not, but we want to go ahead and make this a very personal thing and ask each city council member, manager, the attorney, everyone, what are you going to personally do to fix this budget? What is your department, and we're going to personalize it. That's one of the big questions we're going to do. And what are you going to do to hold the city manager accountable? And the finance director and city manager accountable. All right, who's next? Another one of the moderators, if you don't mind, one of the breakout.
Sure, Miguel can go. So one breath. We talked about three main things. We're looking at the example that Oakland is using for their police department, which is using like a counselors on wheels program, because mental health counselors coming to a scene is far cheaper than an officer of the police. Also looking at how do we reduce police numbers? Like, why do we send police out in pairs? Could we cut that in half? And then also, what is the city doing to make sure that the bills that the government of California owes the city of El Cerrito are being collected in a timely manner? I believe in some cases it takes 6 to 9 months to get paid. And that's a point of concern. And these are the three main things we would like to maybe address to the city.
Fantastic, thank you. Let's see, who would like to go next?
I'll go.
Oh, go ahead, Sherry, please.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So we had a small group, Linda and I, but Linda has some great thoughts, and one was about the ethics of accounting, and wondering why the auditor is still reporting these problems with the way the finance director is working, and because it's nothing new, and so who's going to hold him accountable? And then I made the point also about recreation. She mentioned that it's, walking on the greenway, she didn't feel comfortable. And I suggested, I said, well, maybe that's why recreation could organize walking groups instead of saying we need, more police to be policing the area. So those were the things we thought about talking to them about.
That's fantastic. Nick, do you want to go ahead?
Sure, yeah. We had one attendee with both sort of a question and a recommendation to a degree, asking about, has there been any discussion around reducing the amount of the use of consultants in city government, which I know is a very expensive use of resources. So I thought that was an interesting point that they brought up.
That's a fantastic question. Did you have another observation? Sorry, I can tell I'm at the end of the day and my brain's getting fried.
I was going for the one breath rule, but
Okay.
A couple open questions, but I know we might not have time for those right now, so I can make sure we email those participants later.
Fantastic, thank you, Nick. Did I miss any of our moderators?
Yeah, I can.
Okay,
speak
yes,
for our
Hillary,
group.
please.
Yeah, we talked about finding ways to remind city council and the city manager that they need to be held accountable to us, the citizens, and just kind of talked about how, it would be useful to show this trajectory of El Cerrito going from a place where we had enough to not very much, and reminding them and finding creative ways to increase that accountability.
That's a great point, Yari. Let's see. Did we hear from, no, Zach's not here. Okay. Okay, so I had a really wonderful chat with Pamela. It was just the two of us in our breakout room. And I feel super honored that that got to happen, because I had this wonderful takeaway of the power of stories and anecdotes. And we have, thanks to the tremendous amount of, sorry about that. Thanks to the tremendous amount of work that all of our volunteers have put in, we have the stats, we have graphs, we have a lot of numbers and data on our side. And I think that's really powerful. Another important tool is to think about the power of storytelling and of making things personal. So I was really struck by Pamela was saying, I'm not following my own rule. Pamela was saying, stories about senior services and the impact those make. And I might want to share some personal stories about what I hope to get out of El Cerrito City Services in the future and with my future family. Okay. So we have a quick poll for everyone next. You will see it pop up on your screen, and there are 5 questions. So you may need to scroll down. And this just covers some basic questions with you agree or disagree with the auditor's report and various recommendations. So we'll give everyone some time to go through and those. And
Rhea, can I please share the screen? I just wanted to be able to have the final dates and like call of action while we're doing the poll.
Yes, that would be great. Let's see if we can get you.
I got it. I can.
You got it? Okay, great, good. I was like, I have to learn how to do stuff. Beautiful. All right, we're going to give people another 30 seconds or so to fill out the poll. Thank you, everyone who's already filled that out. And, oh, let's see. Linda says, this is just the sample questionnaire, cannot change pages or submit it. Well, I apologize for that technical difficulty, Linda. Please reach out if you can with your answers. Let's see, Ezra could submit theirs. Okay, so there may be a little bit of some hiccups, but that's okay. We can continue this conversation via email. So as a reminder to everyone, great. Thank you everyone for these poll results. This is super helpful. So Rhea J has brought up some call to action and kind of what's next. As a reminder, we'll be sending you all a follow-up email with the slideshow and links to documents where you can get more information. Everyone, please save the date of April 10th at 10 a.m. for the city town hall meeting about the budget. This is going to be a virtual event. So if you are like me and you're not lucky enough to be vaccinated yet, or you're not able to be vaccinated, it will be safe. And there are, of course, other city council meetings that are coming up as well on the 6th and the 13th. Please, if you're not already, sign up for our newsletter on elcerritoprogressives.com. You can also follow our blog and keep in touch with us through social media. And don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions, concerns, or if we've missed anything. Lastly, everyone, please, like was said from the groups, reach out to our city council members and our city manager, city clerk and finance director, and all other departments, just with a letter that, saying what this means to you and where you think we should be taking our city next. Thank you, everyone, so much. Please use the chat before we close to send us any feedback about this meeting. And in case I forgot to mention it earlier, before the April 10th, prepare your talking points and try to share what you've heard today with at least one or two neighbors to help get the word out. We know that these services have a really big impact on the community, and we want to make sure everyone gets a voice.
Yeah, if anyone wants to stay longer, if they have more questions, I think there's some people here who are willing to do that as well.